In response to President Obama's endorsement of same-sex marriage, the High Impact Leadership Coalition, led by Bishop Harry R. Jackson Jr., held a marriage summit from Wednesday, May 23rd through Thursday, May 24th.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Bishop Harry Jackson. I'm the chairman of the High Impact Leadership Coalition. We also lead a group called the International Communion of Evangelical Churches. We're gathered here today to make a declaration to the nation and call for a moment of moral and spiritual clarity here in America. The events of the last few weeks, in which the president came out and talked about his own personal opinions about same-sex marriage, as many of you know, has thrown our community collectively kind of into a tizzy. It has been most impacting on the faith community in some of our minority communities, such as the Black community. Today, the group that stands before you is a new and better rainbow coalition. It's a collection of blacks and whites, Hispanics, who have Christianity as their common bond together. And we believe that biblical marriage should be maintained and protected. So we're here to make a declaration that we're for biblical marriage, but we're also here to ask the president a question. In this moment of seeking moral clarity, what are you going to do, Mr. President? 176 of us, representing several thousand church members and several denominations, gathered, and we have a letter that we are sending to President Obama. We want to know whether he's going to use the bully pulpit of the presidential office to absolutely erase the image of biblical marriage from the face of the earth. The voters need to know whether they have a friend or, in a sense, an enemy to an institution that God has ordained. Some of us have taken his statements as a declaration of political war against the venerable institution of marriage. Others are concerned. In the African American community, many people are saying they made him do that. We don't understand why he did that. We don't believe that really was the president's intent. Others have given high fives in the back room saying he got paid. We don't really know what the intent of the president is, except that we know that it is not just an isolated incident. Some further action will follow. We also decry the approach of Harry Reid, in which he declares that he is going to repeal DOMA. We believe that a movement, a righteousness and justice movement, will rise up in America and draw a line in the sand that says marriage must be protected, marriage will be protected, and I, for one, vow that I will invest whatever influence and faith and grace and follow-through action we have in protecting the institution of marriage. Would you agree with me about that? Yes. It's a great place to say amen. I want to talk for a moment about political consequences. In 2004, George Bush won his second term in office by a shift in the vote that occurred in Ohio with only 8% of the voters changing. Also in Florida, only 8 to 9% of black voters changed. Not the whole group in that state, just a small minority. What was most concerning about the president's comments was it seemed to be a slap in the face of black clergy. It seemed to say, I know that you hold these views, and that in the marriage amendment battle in the great state of California, 70% of blacks voted for marriage. well, nearly 95% voted for President Obama. And the same kind of statistics in Florida. Given those kinds of statistics, it seemed and felt like to some of us who happen to be African American, it felt like an insult or gauntlet was laid down. So today we come and we say, we are here for marriage. We defend marriage. And this is just the beginning. The president should know that there can be political consequences, not only for him, but for his party. There's a bipartisan group that will talk today. 3 additional points I want you to hear before I turn it over to the other speakers who will share their views and their stance. And that is, on June 1, we are beginning a righteousness and justice fast. 40 days fasting. We're calling churches all around America to fast for the moral healing of our nation. Number 2, we're asking for 100,000 plus churches to preach a message on Father's Day that focuses on marriage, and that a declaration affirming biblical marriage would be read. 100,000 churches. Third, we're asking for a vote vertical movement. A vote vertical movement where we begin to vote across all the different racial boundaries and barriers in America, across all the denominational boundaries in the land, that we begin to vote our biblically based values, that we lift up the values of the Christian faith, and that we vote according to that, not just Democrat and Republican. It's powerful. And then fourth, we're going to send this letter to President Obama, articulating in clear terms the essence of what we've just said to you. We believe that we must defend marriage, that biblical marriage should be the marriage that America remains built upon. Thank you. Bishop Joseph Matera, thank you very much. Bishop Joseph Matera of New York City will be our next speaker. Bishop.
As was said, Bishop Joseph Matera, I'm the overseeing bishop of Christ Covenant Coalition and the director of City Action Coalition, and I've been a senior pastor in an at-risk community in New York City for 29 years. And my grandmother was the first ordained woman Hispanic minister in New York City history. And those of us in my community who understand the fragmentation of family, understand the problem with high dropout rate, understand the problem of children being raised by a single mom or by numerous people that try to chime in and help, realize that we need to support the institution of marriage and not change the definition. It would be like saying it's okay for us to counterfeit American dollars and have no consequences. When you counterfeit something, you cheapen the value of it, and by counterfeiting marriage with alternate definitions of it, you actually weaken it. And as a Hispanic leader, I want to say that my community desperately needs strong marriages. My community needs a president who's going to be a model father and mother and pass down what marriage is to our generation. Our generation is dying. Our generation is fragmented. Our generation is being raised by unstable families, on the rise more and more as we see sociologically and statistically. And we desperately need the president to stand for something that's going to aid us in our communities. I'm going to speak for myself now. I believe the president was calculated in his statement. I don't believe that it was because Joseph Biden said something. Biden was reported to have said the same thing 2 weeks prior in another meeting. We believe that, I believe, I'll say, that he said that because he needed A, more money from a certain group of people, and B, because he can't run on the strength of his own policies. The economy is tanking. Unemployment is still too high. And he's trying to divert the debate before they start away from the economy. I pray that he doesn't succeed in that. I want to beg and plead the body of Christ to take a stand. Because at this time, if we don't take a stand and we lose this battle nationally, there's no coming back to a healthy place. Why is it that the only states that have approved same-sex marriage have been those who have used, as the president has in my opinion, political reasons, either judicial or legislative methodologies to change the definition of marriage like they did in New York State? Why is it they don't allow the people to vote? Why is it that 32 states that gave people an opportunity to vote on whether marriage should be between one man and one woman, why is it that every single time the people have spoken and said that marriage is between one woman and one man? Why? Why is it only when people, the minority of people, use political means to change the definition of marriage, why is it that they can do that and we should remain silent? We need to take a stand. I firmly, I want to say I support Bishop Jackson's stand and the measures that he's stating we need to take, and we're going to throw our weight behind that and the weight of our organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop. Next speaker is Jim Garlow from the Great Skyline Wesleyan Church.
Jim Garlow from San Diego Skyline Church, founder of the Pastors Rapid Response Team and chairman of Renewing American Leadership based here in Washington, D.C. Barack Obama has spoken openly of his loss of a father image, his own dad being absent much of the time. He has challenged the nation for fathers to rise up, and I suspect he's a very good father to his two daughters. From all that I know, his wife is a wonderful mother to the two daughters. I would pose the question to the president, which one is unimportant, father or mother? By his redefinition, one will have to go. Is your wife so unimportant, sir, that she can be replaced by simply any other male? Or is there value in the fact of one man and one woman, a father and a mother, the person who contributes the egg and the sperm as they come together are best in a position to protect and nourish and care for that child? Otherwise, they move into a very at-risk position. If two moms is so good, why not three moms? Why not five moms? There's a reason why nature has dictated what the Bible clearly affirms, and that is one man, one woman, a father and mother for children. They're not replaceable, as he may expect. The second thing is the context in which he made the announcement. The context was clearly, if you read a sentence or two before that, he started with the line, I am a, quote, practicing Christian. Those are his words, not mine. And then he invoked the name of Jesus, specifically Christ's sacrificial death on the cross. He made the discussion in a theological construct. We are not the ones that asked for this argument. Right. He moved to our arena and declared it in those words, with those words. Right. That being the case, maybe a basic 101 of Christianity would be wise for him to know that throughout historic, orthodox, authentic, biblical Christianity, and there's no other kind of Christianity other than biblical Christianity, marriage has always been defined as one man, one woman. Yeah. I understand a person can be a Christian and be ill-informed. A person can call themselves a Christian and be biblically illiterate. Yes. Or biblically perhaps apostate. But as a practicing Christian, ongoing, growing Christian within the scope of history, authentic, biblical, historic, orthodox Christianity has always affirmed marriage being one man and one woman. A third thing that I want to call attention to is the consequences. We saw a great deal in our study of this issue in California in the Prop 8 battle, that every single place that you have long-term so-called same-sex marriage, you have three things sacrificed at that altar. One is personal freedoms. The second one is parental rights. And the third one is religious liberties. All three of those go. I don't have the time to make the case for it because my time is about up. But people on both sides of this issue, on the radical gay agenda, the other side, historic Christian freedoms that we've enjoyed in this nation, they know full well they're two locomotives on the same track going at full force, speed towards each other. They cannot both exist in the same nation at the same time. Everybody on both sides of the issue clearly knows this. The casualty will be our religious liberties, and there's tremendous evidence for it in some states and already in parts of Europe as well. Like the colonial pastor who called his congregation to go stand at a bridge, according to the story, he took off his vestments, he marched out with his musket, the men of the church followed him, he stood at a bridge watching the British troops advance towards them, and he turned to his men and he said, "Here we die." And that is where we are here. This is one we go to the mat for. If necessary, here we die.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Our next speaker, wonderful. Our next speaker is a New York City Councilman, a Democrat, Fernando Cabrera.
Thank you so much, everyone. It's truly a pleasure to be here today. I stand as a New York City Council member, as a proud Democrat, but I have a message to my president. The message is this: I represent a district of about 160,000 people, mainly made up of Latinos and African Americans. Constituents that have said to me over and over again that they support traditional marriage. And I'm here to say to my president, to my Democratic president, do not take the Latino and African American vote for granted.
Yeah. All right. Say that.
We have seen the chatter and the social media outlets where we see constantly people saying, my president has lost my vote. Mr. President, do not take the minority Democratic vote for granted. Because if you take our values for granted, you're going to take our vote for granted. And if you take our vote for granted, then we're going to take you for granted. And so we say today to the President of the United States, as a proud Democrat, to reconsider the message that he's sending forth. We have young people here today. This is not just about us, it's about the next generation. Right. We don't want to send confusion. Nature, design, natural design, we have seen that you can only procreate. I heard some people say, well, what about couples that can't have children, but they have the potentiality for it? And this is what we're calling for. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Great job. Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker is an amazing leader, woman, hailing from Virginia Beach, Bishop Ann Jimenez from Rock City Churches.
Yes. Thank you. I'm Bishop Ann Jimenez from Rock Church in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and I proudly stand here with this Rainbow Coalition today. And we're here from so many various backgrounds and differences, but those differences don't matter to us today because we stand here, we're the church, and we are united, and we're united over this issue. And I call upon every believer, every Christian across the nation to take the biblical stand for marriage. And it's already been said, we draw a line in the sand, and we refuse to give in. My granddaughter is here with me today. I want her to know that her grandmother took a stand because it's important for our families and our children and my great-grandchildren. I want them to know that we stood for the biblical meaning and definition of marriage. One man and one woman. Amen.
Thank you. Our last speakers before a final statement by me and then questions will be Tony Perkins of the Family Research Council. Yeah.
Thank you, Bishop Jackson. And I am privileged to stand here with this collection of pastors from across the nation. In fact, today, yesterday actually, we began our annual pastors conference here in Washington, D.C., where we have nearly 600 folks gathered from 46 different states, representing just about every denomination, every ethnic background here. This is an issue, as has been stated here. A line has been drawn in the sand. It's not a rhetorical line. It is a line that will determine the future of this country. And we've seen, even in the wake of the president's evolution, that Harry Reid has said that he is going to move to repeal the Federal Defense of Marriage Act. Now, the president has said that he's okay with states defining marriage as the union of a man and a woman. I guess that's pretty good, since 32 states that have voted in the favor of traditional marriage. If you can do the math, that's more than half the states, the 50 states, that is. And when we look at this issue, you see, on average, the vote is 67% of voters say marriage is the union of a man and a woman. Wow. Now, why is DOMA important? Well, DOMA does two things. DOMA not only defines marriage for purposes of federal law, but DOMA is also the thin line of protection for those 30 states that have enshrined the definition of marriage in their constitution, and the other dozen states that have it in their statutes. Without DOMA, Massachusetts, Iowa, one of the other states could impose their definition by a rogue judge on that other state. And so DOMA is essential for the states that have exercised the right to define marriage or preserve that definition. That is the only thing that protects it. Now, as has been stated here by Dr. Garlow in particular, this issue is not just about whether or not two people have an affinity for one another. If that were it, today in America, no one is prohibited from living together, no matter what their sex is, no matter what their relationship, brother and sister, friend, grandparent, does not matter. No law restricts anyone from living together or entering into contractual relationships for property or other matters. But that's not what this is really about. As we've seen in Massachusetts, and what we've seen in other jurisdictions, as this is about what our children are going to be taught in elementary school.
That's right.
It is about stepping in between a parent and their child and imposing a new morality or absence thereof upon our children. Now, we didn't ask for this debate. I made my beginning in public policy as a legislator working to strengthen marriage, authoring the nation's first covenant marriage law. I'm happy to continue to work on strengthening marriage, but when someone is trying to redefine it, they cannot expect us to be silent.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
In fact, we have seen over 40 years of the impact that the public policy change of no-fault divorce has had upon the lives of children. And if we think that this will have no ramifications for children in the future, we are foolish.
Right.
And the pastors see it. We are seeing a historical gathering, a drawing in of pastors across ethnic, denominational lines that are saying we can no longer stay in the shadows. We're no longer going to allow politicians to take issues and make them political and tell us to keep our hands off. These are first and foremost moral and spiritual issues, and we will speak the truth to those issues. But let me say this, and I say this to all of us gathered, and I know we would agree on this, but we also issue a challenge to those who want to redefine marriage and morality in this country. Our country is built upon civil debate. We have the arena by which we debate these issues, and they must be debated. We've seen the effects of the abortion being thrust upon this country, not democratically, not through the legislative branches, but through the courts, and 40 years later, it is not resolved. This will not be resolved unless we are able to have a free and fair debate, not marginalizing with name-calling and issuing motives, but rather let's talk about the facts. Yeah. Let's look at the social science. Let's look at the research, and let's talk about it. Because in the end, the reason most of these pastors, if not all, are here to speak is, yes, they know marriage is important, but it's the religious liberty that undergirds that marriage and that institution and the ability to share the love of Jesus Christ with men, women, and children regardless of their lifestyle. And that's what that is how we will engage in this debate.
Amen. To sum it all up, I've come to say I stand for marriage. Yes. To sum it all up, a Rainbow Coalition has come to say I stand for marriage. To sum it all up, black and brown, rich and poor, different denominations have come to say, I stand for marriage. I believe that the political system in America is broken and has kept people apart. But under the banner of Christ, there's a cry that is coming forth to the nation, and it's saying, I stand for marriage. And this new Rainbow Coalition is going to begin to shake the foundations of this land on this issue. Remember, we only need a few percentage points of shift among African Americans and Hispanics, along with our white brothers and our Asian brothers, and all of a sudden, the sound of our voices and our vote will go around this nation and the world. Yes. Let me declare it in case you haven't heard it. I stand for marriage.
As you can see from these excerpts, the Marriage Summit brought powerful leaders together who spoke to issues most Christians are concerned about. To experience the summit with all of its important content, you can get MP3s, CDs, or DVDs at thehopeconnection.org.